So the situation is pretty terrible for the challenger, Fabiano Caruana, heading into game 3 of the tiebreaks. He's already down 2-0 and he has the black pieces against the defending world champion. Very simple. You have to win. I mean, there's no tomorrow if you don't win. So black has to go for it. And this is what makes the first move of Magnus, the reigning world champion, so difficult. Pawn to e4. And we all know that black's main weapon, Fabiano's main weapon, is e5. And the Petroff, the Russian defense. But as good as it is, it's mostly a drawing weapon. And for white, it will be very difficult to play for a draw. For instance, you could go for like a queen trade variation. You could play something like this, d6, knight here, and I think like queen e2 here is just it's going to be really difficult for black to play for a win here. And then just take, you can maybe, yeah, bishop d5 is probably even better here. And eventually you have to trade. Symmetrical position, almost impossible to win, especially against Magnus. So Fabiano really couldn't go for this in a must-win situation, so he went for c5. Sicilian, the first Sicilian by Fabiano in this match. After knight f3 we see e6, probably going for the Taiman of Sicilian, but c4 here by Magnus. Heading for a positional variation, setting up sort of a bind on the d5 square. So black most often goes for some sort of a headsock situation here with pushing his pawns to these squares, awaiting further developments, but Fabi went bishop c5. This is the 5th most popular move here, but Carlsen was unfazed and played knight to c2. Now we have knight f6 by Fabi, a quick knight c3 by Carlsen, castles and bishop e3 offering the trade. b6 by Fabiano. Okay, keeping the tension. Black must try to keep pieces on the board. Bishop to e7. Bishop e2, bishop to b7 is what I wanted to say. Castles and queen to e7. Now, no nonsense from white here. He's very solid, so now he just develops the queen. The plan is to connect the rooks, get them to the central files. After rook after d8, rook after d1. And we have knight to e5 by Fabi. So he's hitting the pawn on e4. What to do about it? Carlsen takes on c5 and then pushes the knight. So at the moment the bishop takes, pawn takes. The only way for black to do anything is to maybe utilize the d4 square, but at the moment the knight on e5 is the only piece that can really go to this square, and you see the pieces in green firmly covering the d4 square. So after f4, Fabi went to g6. Now queen e3 covering the pawn on e4. Simple chess by Magnus. He doesn't have to do anything. He is content to wait for Fabi to do whatever he wants to do, whatever he has to do in a must-win situation. So after d6, Carlsen simply doubles the rooks on the d file, rook d2 and rook a to d1. Queen to c7, slightly improving the queen, as at least now you have influence over the e5 square indirectly. b3, solid move, just protecting, overprotecting stuff that might need protection in the future. b2 is no longer under attack in any lines. h6, g3, protecting the pawn, also playing against the knight. It's not going to h4, it's not going to f4. Rook to d7, bishop f3. So you can see that white is clamping down with almost all his pieces here on the d5 square. He doesn't want black to break with d5. Okay, we can bring this one, but too little too late. The only break for black really is to play d5, but white has it all under control. So rook e8. Black wants to play d5, and putting the rook on e8 lines it up against the queen, so Carlsen simply moves it away. And here we see some ideas of clamping down further on e5, putting a knight on e3, maybe a queen on g2. Knight to e7 was played. Note that the one standard plan for black here is to increase the pressure on the diagonal with queen to b7. Eyeing the e4 pawn. But here it doesn't work because white has a move like knight d5, and if you take ed and your bishop is toast. So Fabi tried knight to e7 here. We have h3, simply awaiting further developments after rook e to d8. Carlsen still sort of checked, you know, waiting for black to do something. Knight c6, g4, queen to a5, still waiting for Fabiano to do something. Queen to c7. But here now, with Fabi having slightly conceded some space, an attack on the c5 pawn, Carlsen thought he would liquidate favorably with e5, and he played it. So a little bit surprising that he would actually undertake any active measures here, but he probably thought he had everything under control. After de by Fabi, we have knight takes c5. With the attack on the rook here, black is more or less forced to take on d2, which he did. Rook takes, and queen takes. And now you have to be careful if you take the pawn here. I will take your bishop and probably play. I was thinking maybe queen d6. But okay, if I want to be safe, I'll just take on f4. But it seems to me I could play. Oh, let's check on b6. I'll take the pawn. Equal material. White shouldn't have any problems here. So after queen takes d2 in the game, we had bishop to a8 by Fabi, getting the bishop out of harm's way. F takes e5 and queen takes e5. Knight takes e5 is possible when white probably takes on a8 and this hangs, but queen takes e5 is actually the better move. But now knight d7 by Carlsen, trying to initiate trades. After queen b2, queen d6, and we have a trade on d7. Okay, Fabiano manages to trade in a way that he gets a queen and a knight, which can often be a good material imbalance against a queen and a bishop. But in this case, after queen d6, king h1, turns out that this bishop is quite strong, and white's main trump is that, well, he has a passed c-pawn, but with black having to play for a win, white's king is actually very, very safe, because all that black can do is try to get a perpetual, and of course leading 2-0. Carlsen is very happy with that. So okay, Fabiano tries to activate the knight, knight to d4, queen to e4 check. Okay, black blocks the check, takes, and queen to e3. After knight e6, a strong move by Carlsen, b4, utilizing the undefended knight on e6, so black can't take on b4. And now knight g5. Okay, black has to try something. It's clear that the idea is f4 to f3, but white is ready for it to play c5, attacking the queen, and keeps on pushing the pawn. What do we do with passed pawns? We push him, baby. Push him, baby. Dim, 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 dim. So c6, knight e6, trying to block the pawn. But now a4. We want to support the pawn with pawn to b5. Knight c7 prevents that. But now queen to f4. Hitting the knight, protecting this pawn. Actually starting to look quite good for white. Queen d6. So at this point seems like Carlsen might be going for all the marbles. No draw here, no soup for you. Carlsen is going for the 3-0. Queen a1, king h2. Note that the queen now is covering this diagonal, so no perpetual. Black tries to activate with knight to d4, but c7. Simply wanting to make a new queen. Black prevents that, but now queen c5. Blocking the c-file, and this is incoming. Queen to e3. c8 queen. Black's problem here is that the desirable queen to f4 is met with king to h1. You don't have a check here anymore because of the queens on the c-file, and any knight move is met with either queen taking on f5 with a trade. So queen f4 is not on the cards. Fabi tried f4, but after queen to g4, he resigned, realizing that, well, there's simply no way for black to do anything here. He's going to lose the game, and Magnus Carlsen retains the title after 12 games and 12 draws in the classical portion. We have 3 decisive games already in the Rapids, and Magnus showing his his extreme superiority in the Rapids. So if you want to blame him for the round 12th draw, I understand you, but I mean, I guess he showed his game plan here. Game 12, he was happy to get it into the Rapids because he knew how much superior he was in the Rapids. He showed it, he proved it, and I think it's clear by now that whoever manages to get a match with Carlsen in 2020, you have to win in the classical portion. Otherwise, I mean, you're in for a world of hurt. So again, Magnus Carlsen, for the 3rd time, retains his championship. He won it in 2013 against Anand, retained it in Sochi in 2014 against Anand, defended it again against Karakin in 2016, and now in 2018 against Fabiano Caruana. So yeah, that's it for my coverage of the World Chess Championship. Magnus Carlsen retains the crown. He is still champion and cements his place in the pantheon of the greatest ever. Is he the greatest ever? Or is it Fischer, or is it Kasparov? Only time will tell, but I think that Magnus is moving up there if he's not already #1. If you're still here, thank you for sticking around for my coverage. I do appreciate it. And I hope to see you very soon with some interesting chess videos. Hope you stick around, and I'll see you then. Bye bye.